Hollywood once adored Heather Locklear, the stunning blonde with the radiant smile who lit up TV screens in Dynasty, T.J. Hooker, and Melrose Place. She was America's golden girl, confident, glamorous, and unstoppable. But behind that dazzling smile was a woman quietly unraveling. For years, Heather Locklear's life seemed like a fairy tale. Fame, beauty, love, she had it all. But fame has a cruel way of revealing who your real friends are. And when the lights began to fade, so did the people who once surrounded her. By the time she hit her 50s, Heather's story had turned from Hollywood success to heartbreaking struggle. Her marriages crumbled, her career stalled, and her private battles spilled into the headlines. The woman who once ruled primetime was now being photographed outside courtrooms, looking nothing like the star the world fell in love with. Now, at 64, the truth of Heather Locklear's life has become even more tragic, a haunting reminder that Hollywood fame comes with a heavy price. Those close to her say she's not the same person she once was. Friends have spoken out, revealing shocking details about her health, her isolation, and the emotional pain that never seems to leave her. This is the untold story of Heather Locklear. The rise, the fall, and the heartbreak behind one of television's brightest stars, and how a woman once loved by millions ended up fighting for herself, one quiet day at a time. Before tragedy clouded her life, Heather Locklear was one of the brightest stars to ever grace television. Born in Los Angeles in 1961, she seemed destined for fame. With her golden hair, radiant smile, and undeniable charisma, she was the kind of actress casting directors dreamt of, the perfect mix of girl next door, innocence, and Hollywood glamour. Her career took off in the early 1980s, when she landed a recurring role on Dynasty, the glitzy primetime soap that defined the decade. As Sammy Jo Carrington, Heather became a household name almost overnight. Her blend of sweetness and edge made audiences fall in love instantly. She wasn't just beautiful, she had presence. The camera adored her, and so did millions of viewers. Soon after, she joined T.J. Hooker opposite William Shatner, proving she could handle action and drama with ease. By the early 90s, she hit her peak with Melrose Place, where she transformed the role of Amanda Woodward into one of TV's most iconic characters. Cold, calculating, powerful, and yet deeply vulnerable beneath the surface, Heather made Amanda unforgettable. But behind that professional success, Heather's personal life was more complicated. Fame brought pressure, and the image of Hollywood's perfect blonde became a mask she had to wear everywhere she went. Off-screen, she longed for normalcy, to be loved for who she was, not for who people expected her to be. In 1986, she married rock legend Tommy Lee, the wild drummer of Mötley Crüe. Their marriage became tabloid gold. Beauty meets bad boy. The world couldn't get enough of them, but their love story was fiery and unstable. Arguments, jealousies, and the chaos of rock and roll life slowly tore them apart. When the marriage ended, Heather was devastated, even though she hid it behind her trademark smile. Then, in 1994, she found love again, this time with Richie Sambora, guitarist of Bon Jovi. They seemed like the perfect match, talented, successful, and deeply in love. For a while, it looked like Heather had finally found peace. They welcomed a daughter, Ava, in 1997, and for a moment, her world was full of hope and happiness. But Hollywood has a way of testing even the strongest hearts. With every new headline and rumor, Heather's private life became public entertainment. The pressure to stay flawless, to always look perfect, act perfect, and live perfectly, was suffocating. She once said in an interview, "People think they know me because they've seen me on TV, but they don't see the nights when I can't sleep, or the days when I can't stop worrying about what comes next." Even as she smiled for cameras and fans, cracks began to show. Behind closed doors, Heather was quietly struggling, with anxiety, with depression, and with the relentless loneliness that comes when fame fades and reality sets in. In those early years, no one could have predicted the darkness that would follow. To the world, she was still the radiant star who could do no wrong. But for Heather, The glitter was starting to lose its shine, and the battle between her public image and private pain had only just begun. As the cameras stopped flashing and her roles became fewer, Heather Locklear began facing a harsh truth. Hollywood had moved on. The woman who once lit up every screen was now fighting to stay relevant in an industry that worships youth and discards its icons the moment they stumble. By the mid-2000s, Heather's picture-perfect life began to unravel. Her marriage to Richie Sambora, once a fairy tale, had quietly begun to fall apart. Rumors of infidelity, emotional distance, and the pressure of fame took their toll. In 2006, the couple divorced after 12 years together. For Heather, it wasn't just the end of a marriage, it was the breaking of her foundation. The woman who had spent her life trying to build stability finally felt it slip away. Friends say that after the divorce, Heather became increasingly reclusive. She struggled with insomnia, bouts of depression, and the crushing loneliness that often hides behind celebrity. To make things worse, every moment of pain was splashed across tabloids. Headlines turned cruel. Heather Locklear's breakdown. Fallen star spirals out of control. Every mistake, every rumor, every photograph taken on a bad day became front-page news. She couldn't go anywhere without being followed. The same photographers who once begged for her smile were now waiting for her tears. In 2008, the world was shocked when Heather was hospitalized after a close friend called authorities, fearing she was in danger. The news spread like wildfire. Another Hollywood tragedy in the making. But Heather, ever the fighter, checked herself into a facility and later told fans she was getting the help she needed. She wanted to believe she could still turn things around. But healing isn't a straight line, and for Heather, the years that followed would only grow darker. Despite moments of recovery, she continued to battle the same inner demons that fame had planted long ago. There were more hospitalizations, more legal troubles, and heartbreaking images of the once radiant star looking lost and exhausted. Fans who remembered her as Amanda Woodward, powerful and in control, now saw a woman who seemed fragile, haunted by the pressures of her past. Insiders later revealed that Heather's struggles weren't just emotional. She faced addiction issues that made recovery even harder. Her friends and family rallied around her, especially her daughter Ava, who became her anchor through the storm. But even love wasn't always enough to silence the pain. One close friend said, Heather just couldn't escape her own thoughts. She missed the person she used to be, and the laughter, the energy, the confidence. She kept saying she wanted to feel like herself again, but she didn't know how. The cruel irony was that Heather's fame, the very thing that gave her everything, had also taken everything away. The spotlight that once celebrated her beauty now magnified her flaws. The audience that once adored her was now watching her unravel. By her late 50s, Heather Locklear had become a tragic symbol of how Hollywood can break even the brightest spirits. The glamorous star who once embodied strength and grace was now a woman desperately trying to hold on. Still, somewhere inside, that spark never died completely. She continued to talk about returning to acting, about finding purpose again, about rebuilding herself. But each time she seemed close to a comeback, the weight of her past dragged her down once more. For those who loved her, watching Heather fade from the spotlight wasn't just sad, it was heartbreaking. Because they knew that beneath the chaos, the cameras, and the headlines, there was still a woman who just wanted peace. By the time Heather Locklear entered her 60s, the sparkle that once defined her had dimmed, but it hadn't disappeared. She was still beautiful, still graceful, but there was a heaviness behind her eyes that only those who've truly suffered could recognize. For years, Heather's life became a cycle of quiet hope followed by public heartbreak. One moment she'd be smiling with friends, promising a new beginning. The next, tabloids would break another story about an arrest, a hospital visit, or a rumored relapse. The same media that once built her up now seemed to take pleasure in tearing her down. Behind closed doors, her world had grown smaller. Friends described her home as both a sanctuary and a cage, a place where she could escape judgment, but also where loneliness seemed to grow louder. Her daughter, Ava, became her greatest source of strength. The two shared an unbreakable bond. Whenever Heather stumbled, it was Ava's voice that helped her get back up. But being Heather Locklear meant never truly escaping the public gaze. Even her efforts to recover were twisted into gossip. The constant invasion of privacy only deepened her anxiety and made her trust fewer people. The same charm that had once made her beloved now felt like a burden, as if she had to keep performing even when her heart was breaking. One friend revealed Heather didn't recognize herself anymore. She'd look in the mirror and say, "I used to be her. Where did she go?" Those close to her say she struggled with the feeling of being trapped between her past and her present, the glamorous star everyone remembered versus the wounded woman she had become. In 2018, Heather's story hit a new low. A series of troubling incidents led to her being hospitalized again. Photos of her looking disoriented spread across the internet within hours. It was brutal. No one saw the pain behind those images. They only saw a fallen star. To the public, she had become another cautionary tale of Hollywood excess. But to those who truly knew her, she was a deeply sensitive soul fighting demons that fame had made impossible to escape. Despite it all, Heather never completely gave up. She entered therapy, reconnected with her family, and focused on her health. There were glimmers of recovery. She began painting, gardening, and even talking about acting again. In one rare interview, she said softly, "You never stop trying. You just keep finding new ways to heal." That simple line spoke volumes. It wasn't the confident Heather from Melrose Place. It was a woman stripped of all illusions, still clinging to hope in the face of endless pain. As she turned 64, those closest to her admitted that her life had slowed down dramatically. Gone were the red carpets, the interviews, the glamorous photo shoots. What remained was a quiet existence and a fragile peace she had fought so hard to find. But even in her solitude, Heather's story carries a painful truth about Hollywood, that it often forgets the very people it once celebrated. Her tragedy isn't just about fame lost. It's about a system that chews up its brightest talents and leaves them to battle their own shadows. And yet, through all the darkness, Heather's story isn't without light, because behind every broken moment there remains that faint but unyielding spark, the same light that once made millions fall in love with her. She may no longer be the queen of primetime television, but to those who remember, Heather Locklear will always be the woman who brought beauty, strength, and heart to every role she played, even when the role was her own survival. Today, at 64, Heather Locklear lives far away from the flashing lights that once defined her. The cameras have moved on, the tabloids have found new faces to chase, and Hollywood, as it so often does, has forgotten one of its brightest stars. But in that silence, Heather has found something she never truly had before. Peace. Those closest to her say she's a different person now. The chaos, the heartbreak, the endless cycle of pressure and pain. She's finally stepped away from it all. Her life has slowed down, but in that stillness, she's rediscovering small joys, quiet walks, time with her daughter Ava, and moments of laughter that don't need an audience. For the first time in decades, she isn't pretending to be okay. She's simply trying to be. Her home, nestled in the hills of Thousand Oaks, has become her sanctuary. The once glamorous actress now spends her days gardening, reading, and painting, creating color where her life once felt gray. Neighbors describe her as polite, soft-spoken, and private. Some say they hear her humming old Melrose Place soundtracks, while tending to her flowers, a bittersweet reminder of the woman who once commanded every room she entered. But the road to this quiet peace was paved with unimaginable pain. Her health, both physical and emotional, has suffered deeply. Years of stress, depression, and public humiliation took their toll. Close friends have shared that Heather still battles difficult days, days where the weight of her past feels too heavy to carry. But the difference now is that she's no longer hiding it. She's learning to forgive herself, to accept her flaws, and to live without the mask of perfection that Hollywood once demanded of her. In one of her last interviews, Heather said something that broke hearts around the world. "I used to think fame was love. But fame doesn't hold you when you cry. It doesn't care if you're scared. Real love is quiet. It's the people who stay when everyone else walks away. That one quote summed up the tragedy and the beauty of Heather Locklear's life. She had everything the world could offer, except peace. And now, in her 60s, she's finally learning that peace isn't found in cameras or awards. It's found in forgiveness, humility, and the love of those who never gave up on her. Her daughter Ava remains her strongest bond, visiting often, calling daily, and reminding her mother that she's still loved, still needed, and still the same beautiful soul she's always been. Friends say Ava is Heather's reason to keep going, the anchor that steadies her through every storm. Fans, too, have begun to rally around her, sending letters, artwork, and messages of support. They don't see her as a fallen star anymore. They see her as a survivor, a woman who gave them laughter, drama, and unforgettable memories on screen. And now gives them something far more important, a reminder that even broken hearts can heal. Heather Locklear may never return to Hollywood in the way she once did, but her story is not one of failure. It's one of endurance, of a woman who lost everything that once defined her and somehow found herself again in the quiet corners of life. As one longtime friend put it, Heather isn't the girl from Melrose Place anymore. She's something stronger. She's the woman who lived through it all and survived. And maybe that's the legacy she never planned to leave behind. Not of fame, not of perfection, but of resilience. Because even after the heartbreak, the humiliation, and the years of silence, Heather Locklear's light still shines, softer now, but real.